lot of stories. Niners and Jags go this week. Who's going to start at quarterback? How are the Niners going to overcome Nick Bosa? How are the Niners 3-0, despite the fact that they're still horrible on special teams, bad in the red zone, all kinds of flaws, yet they're 3-0. And now here come the Jaguars. And a lot of people think this is going to be a tough game. One of the things that I think was really interesting is yesterday in the press conference, Robert Saleh came out and basically said that Liam Cohen and some of the coaches that he brought with him on his staff from the Minnesota Vikings are really experts at sign stealing. And he just kind of dropped that little nugget on us. Here is Saleh, and then Cohen responds. Let's listen to it first, and then we'll react. Here it is.
Jacksonville, this is a very young, but it's a very talented group, Liam and his staff, coming from a couple of guys coming from Minnesota, they've got legally a really advanced signal stealing type system where they always find a way to put themselves in an advantageous situation. They do a great job with it. They formation you to try to find any nugget they can. So we've got to be great with our signals, and we got to be great with our communication, and to combat some of the tells that we might give on the field. So they're almost elite in that regard. That whole entire tree, from Sean to Kevin O'Connell to all those guys, they all do it. So so there's challenges. They're going to catch us in some situations where they have the advantage, and we just got to play good, sound, fundamental football and do our best to execute them.
Robert, when it comes to the communication, is there any drop-off? Like, was Bosa the more vocal guy on that defensive line in the games, like specifically in games?
I guess into some other stuff there. Okay, so that's what Robert Saleh said. And then Liam Cohen was asked about it at the Jaguars presser, and here's his response.
Stealing? Is there any thoughts to that? I mean...
Yeah, I'm not going to speak on that fully right now. Have a huge game for us coming up this weekend. Got a great defense that we've got to go and attack, and that's where our whole mindset and mentality is right now.
Were you surprised he went there?
Yeah, again, we're really trying to focus on a darn good defense that we have to go and try to go attack and offensively get better, about us getting better. Putting it together for 4 quarters and trying to create some explosives in the pass game, some of those things that we're, trying to get better at as an offense. And so that's where the focus is right now.
Forgetting his comments, isn't that part of coaching, is trying to figure out whatever tell your opponent has?
Yeah, I mean, we have kind of typically, by formation, by game plan, by working really hard as a coaching staff throughout the week, trying to get indicators by your formation, motion, shift, pre-snap. Those are the things that you're trying to do as a coach if you're, trying to put your players in the best position to be successful, whether it's attacking man or zone coverage with your formations, motions, and concepts. So it's a lot of hard work that goes into game planning and trying to put your players in the best position to be successful.
You mentioned the explosives on offense early in the week.
All right, there you go. That's some good stuff there. I love the Jacksonville reporters trying to curry favor with the head coach. You surprised he went there? Yeah. It's like, but now, before you react, well, give me your reaction. What do you think?
Well, this isn't the Houston Astros stealing signs a few years ago.
Garbage can banging or whatever.
Exactly, when they were doing it illegally. This is not that. And the Jags media corps, for them to kind of say, are you surprised he went there, like it's a dig? This is something that happens a lot. This is something, as Liam Cohen said, really good coaching staffs try to do and implement and study, because you're always looking for an advantage, especially in the game of football where everything is so complex and you're looking for any type of edge that you can get. And so I don't think that Robert Saleh saying that is that big of a deal. There are a lot of coaching staffs across the NFL who will look for telltale signs. They will look for trends. They will look for things that they can find to try to exploit what the opposition does well. And for Robert Saleh, my biggest takeaway with this is high level stuff. For him to be cognizant of this and understand that this is happening, Larry, this is something that Nick Sorensen would not do. This is something that Nick Sorensen would not notice. And this is why the Niners are in such better hands with Saleh at DC as compared to a guy like Nick Sorensen. And it's on all fronts, right? But for me, I look at this as, wow, Robert Saleh is so intelligent. He has such a great feel for what's going on. And he knows that a lot of members of this Kevin O'Connell tree are doing things like this. And so throughout his game plan for the week, he's relaying this to his coaching staff. He's relaying this to his defense, where they have to be on their P's and Q's. They have to be aware of this, because if they don't have things tightened up, they're going to give an indication as to what they might be doing formation-wise, play call-wise to Jacksonville, and then Jacksonville's going to try to take advantage of that. And so this is something that is a battle between two sides and two coaching staffs, and Liam Cohen is a really good offensive mind. I mean, when he was at Kentucky, he turned Will Levis into a potential first-round pick. A lot of people don't realize that, and Will Levis last year was the worst starting quarterback in football. He turned Baker Mayfield into, in my eyes, a top 10 MVP candidate last year, where Baker was one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. And obviously, Trevor Lawrence isn't off to a great start. I just don't think he's that good of a quarterback. But the Jags are 2-1, and they're 2-1 because this coaching staff has this team a lot more buttoned up than the previous regime with Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson.
If you go to an NFL football game and you sit in the press level, a lot of times it's the same level that the coaching staff sit at, right? And there'll be a couple doors that will say on the outside of the door, absolutely no visitors allowed. Have you seen any of those signs?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely no visitors allowed. That means you're walking into the Eagles coaching booth, or you're walking into the Jaguar or the Niner coaching booth, and they do not allow visitors. Okay, so that's one. Two, in these booths, if you watch, it's not like that's one guy. We're talking about an army of guys.
Yeah.
We're talking about 10 guys, maybe more. So you got 10 guys. And I was one of these guys in the Canadian League and with the Arizona Cardinals. But I was one of these guys in the Canadian League on Kay Stevenson's staff. My job was defensive quality control. So, for example, on the 49ers right now, John Lynch's son, Jake, is the 49ers defensive quality control guy. He's one of, I think they probably have 3 or 4 each. Those guys go sit in the booth during the game. They know the game plan. They were part of putting together the game plan. They know football. They know it on a high level. Some of these guys are future NFL coaches, assistants, or head coaches, maybe future NFL general managers. There's a lot of young, really sharp football guys. What do? What are they all sitting there doing? It's not just a big smorgasbord and everybody's having lunch. They're trying to contribute to the victory. So they all usually have a game day role. And when I was in the Canadian Football League, we had guys, everybody had a game day role. And we probably had 3 or 4 different guys that were in the booth with the binoculars, focused on either their booth, or the great Tim Ryan is walking by, their booth, or their sideline, and trying to decipher the signals. And a lot of times the signal delivering in football is not meant to be overly secretive. And so it's easy sometimes to pick off signals and tendencies. And the good quality control guys who watch tons and tons and tons of the film will be able to find tendencies that are tells. I found one in the very first time I was up in the booth in the Canadian League in a preseason game. We were playing it was the Sacramento Gold Miners playing the Las Vegas Posse. The Las Vegas Posse had a wide receiver who was a rookie from Florida State named Tamrick Vanover. And Vanover was just really, really talented, but he had, for whatever reason, didn't want to go to school, so he left Florida State. So he was this NFL prospect that was just moonlighting in the Canadian League just because he had nowhere else to play. So he wasn't the sharpest guy, and he would come out of the huddle, and when it was a run play, he'd leave his gloves totally flapping in the wind, and you could see them flapping. And when it was time for him to run a route, he'd get that thing real tight and make sure his gloves were tight, to the point where you knew run or pass based on this guy was cinching up his gloves. And it was, you could see it. And we read that for like over a half before they got to it and adjusted. So there are people whose job, they're making a salary and they're being asked on game day to go, bird dog, as they call it, bird dogging. You just sit there with your binoculars and you talk about it. You have meetings during the week. Hey, this is what we think this sign is. This is what we think the indicator is. This is the guy that we think's delivering it. He's going to deliver it to this guy. It could be this guy. They could use cards. They may do this. They may do that. And then for hours and hours, they would find who the key guys are before the game up there for hours before the game. Then they would find their guys and look for the tells. And so give manpower. They're trying to win. So the sign stealing thing, I think, is just part of the game. And I thought he was almost like Saleh was almost like patting him on the back, but he also was like trying to get in his head, like, we're on to you, buddy. We're on to you. So you better sharpen your game. Whatever you're going to do, you better hone it, because it was like Liam Cohn was the kid with his hand in the cookie jar there. Didn't he have a very guilty look when he started answering that first question? He's like,
he smirked. He smirked, and he's like, oh, yep, that is what we're doing. But of course, you're going to hear coach speak from him, and he's not going to readily admit that, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is also very similar to like when a pitcher tips pitches. Let's say you have a pitcher, he's a right-hander, right? And he's about to throw a changeup. And when you're changing your grip in the glove, because if you're going fastball, let's say you're throwing a two-seamer or a four-seamer, right? You've got your two fingers here, right? But if you go changeup, usually you put three fingers on the baseball. If you're throwing a circle change, it's something like this. If you see a little bit of a wiggle in the glove because you're changing your hand with how you're holding the ball, you're tipping your pitches, right? And so the other team is going to identify that and say, okay, if he's messing with this glove, a changeup is coming. If the glove is still, usually means a fastball is coming. Like, that's an example of that. And then another thing that comes to mind too, remember when Chip Kelly was the head coach of Oregon? He was really the first coach to do this. If you looked at the sideline, obviously he would have his headset on, he'd have the play sheet. He was the one calling plays. But to his left and to his right, there were all these assistants who were holding up these huge cards and these huge signs, and they were random. It could be a Denny's logo. It could be the Philly Fanatic. It could be a San Francisco Giants logo. Like, it was always very random, right? And his offense would know where to look. There were a couple of guys with different colored wristbands, and they would know where they're looking for the call, for the formation, what Chip Kelly wanted. But he had all these people doing all these different things because he didn't want the other team defensively to steal signs and know what was coming when Chip Kelly was calling these plays. And so this has been done for a long time. Again, it's not anything that's illegal like the Houston Astros, where I do think Jose Altuve was wearing like a buzzer. That's why he hit that walk-off against Aroldis Chapman, and he didn't want anybody to rip his jersey off. He said, oh, it's because I got a tattoo. I didn't want anybody to see it. Bullshit, right? This isn't that. This is something that is being utilized for competitive advantage. And honestly, like, Robert Saleh's just a genius, man. I mean, we're seeing so far what he's doing with this defense. We had an idea, right, that they would be better in week 18. But the fact that they're this far along, playing this well with all these new faces, all these rookies, it's a testament to him as a coach. It's game planning. It's putting players in a position to succeed. It's getting creative with player personnel and how these players are used. It's being creative and exotic with some of your looks, some of your blitzes. It's making adjustments in game and season. And it's stuff like this where he's pointing this out. This is high-level coaching by Robert Saleh, and you got to love it, man.
No question. No question. And I think Saleh is going to be one of the real interesting guys to watch in this particular game, because how does he compensate for not having Nick Bosa? Now, we asked him about it this week, and I thought he gave us a little bit of a tell in what he told us. I don't know if it was sign stealing, but as far as at the presser, he did kind of say, hey, and this is what my takeaway was, and I'm not quoting him exactly, but basically it was like, hey, we got a lot of good things going with our defense, so we don't want to change everything and take everybody, we don't want to totally flip our scheme just because we lost Nick.
Yeah.
So I get the feeling they're going to try to keep Yatir Gross-Matos and Mikael Williams inside in that NASCAR package, in that third down turbo package, or whatever they want to call it. And try to find somebody else that could slide in for Nick on first and second down. Now, I think it's probably most likely to be some combination of Yatir Gross-Matos and Sam O. And I think Matt Barrows made the point that Robert Beal, not Trevis Gibson, was called off the practice squad. Now, that was a little bit of a surprise. Why? Because Gibson's the guy who has the 7.5 sack season in his past, and Beal's a guy who's just been a special teamer. But Matty's thought was that Sam O has played a lot of snaps on special teams, and that now Beal was promoted because now he's going to play those snaps on special teams, and Sam O is going to slide into Bosa's role. And that's how they're going to proceed. And I think that's probably right. I think that's probably accurate. I think if it was just like who's a better rusher, I think they would go to Trevis Gibson. But because it's, over Beal, but because they're saying, well, Beal's a really good special teamer and Sam O's the next man up, they'll play Sam O outside on first and second down for Bosa and let Beal take those Sam O special teams reps off his plate. I think that's the way it's going to go. I don't know, but how do you think Saleh in 2020 blitzed like 35% of the time?
Right.
And, I was looking at some of the numbers just from the Arizona game. I mean, he had 40, Niners pressure rate dipped from 45% to 28% when Bosa went off the field. So he's got his hands full here. What do you think Saleh does to compensate?
Yeah, and take those numbers with a grain of salt from that Arizona game, because Nick Bosa got hurt so early in that game. And when you're trying to replace a player like Nick Bosa, there's really no replacing him. You can do it in a game because the opposing offense didn't plan for Nick Bosa to not be out there. The big question is, can you survive without him for the rest of the year? And I know a lot of people out there are calling for the Niners to make a trade. They're not going to make a trade in the next week, 2-3 weeks. I think they're going to gauge to see how this Niners defense is playing. And there's going to be a little bit of a long sample size that they experiment with. And then maybe as we get closer to the deadline, that's when they might pounce and try to make a move. But in the meantime, they're going to try to figure things out to see if they can survive without Nick Bosa, if they can continue to play well. And you make a good point that I discussed a lot on the show this week. You're going to have to blitz a little bit more because on one-on-ones, you don't have a guy in Nick Bosa who's going to be able to win a lot of those reps. I'm interested to see how Bryce Huff plays. He's been awesome to start the year, but it's different when you're Robin as compared to when you're Batman. And he wasn't getting those double teams. Nick Bosa was. Now Bryce Huff's going to get double teamed. And so how does he fare? So all of this goes into it. I think San Francisco's going to have to blitz a little bit more. They did that in 2020. As far as the DVOA numbers, they actually continued to be a pretty good defense without Nick Bosa when he tore his left ACL then, and now he's torn his right ACL now. But the thing with blitzing is you have to pick and choose your spots. You have to be selective. It's going to depend on the down and distance. It's going to depend on the time of the game. It's going to depend on the quarterback that you're going up against. When you're facing Kyler Murray, that's a lot different than when you're facing Trevor Lawrence, right? Because they're two completely different quarterbacks with different skill sets. And obviously Kyler has those quick feet, and he's much more athletic and going to be able to try to improvise and create with his legs as compared to Lawrence, where he's more of that drop back pocket quarterback who's a lot bigger in stature and he can see the field a little bit better. When you do blitz, though, your coverage has to hold up, because if you're sending extra guys to the quarterback, obviously it's a numbers game on that back end, and you don't have as many numbers. The good thing is that Diamador Lenore, I think, has been fantastic this year. He's giving up, I think, 11 receiving yards per game. And I always say this, it's good when you're not hearing from a corner a lot throughout games, because that means that they're not giving up big catches, right? Renardo Green has been really good. Upton Stout obviously has had some good moments and some rookie moments, but he made the play of the game last week for the Niners offense to get the ball back on that 3rd and long, fighting until the end of that play to dislodge it out of the hands of Zay Jones. And so this Niners secondary has been good. I like what we've seen from the safety core. You're not going to replace Nick Bosa. That's impossible to do because he's such a special player, but there are things that you can do to absorb the loss of losing him.
Will Tucker says trade JJ in a third and a fourth round pick to the Bengals for Hendrickson. Then we got this guy says, do we really think getting Hendrickson is realistic? What do you think? I mean, I saw Guy Haberman did a sit down with Daniel Jeremiah, and Daniel Jeremiah's like, yeah, maybe a third round pick and a day 3 pick. And it's like, what? Every team in the league would probably be willing to make that trade. Now there's financial elements to this thing, and you probably wouldn't want to trade any draft capital on day 2 if you're not going to sign Hendrickson beyond 2025. But the Niners, I mean, Hendrickson is a really, really special player. What do you think? I mean, do you think they will go after Hendrickson? Do you think they should? What do you think ultimately the price tag is? And do you have a lower cost alternative that you think is as good or better?
I do think the price tag is a little bit higher than what Daniel Jeremiah said, and obviously a good get by friend of the show, Guy Haberman, for getting DJ on the program. I think he's one of the best NFL draft analysts out there for NFL Network and does a fantastic job. But while I think that the value that the Bengals can get back for Hendrickson is lower than it may have been during the offseason, because now it's in season and the value isn't as high. They don't have as much leverage. I still think you might have to give up a first-round pick or a second-round pick. Now, keep in mind that the Cincinnati Bengals are a historically cheap organization. They're one of the worst-run organizations in the game. Mike Brown as the owner, just a fraud with how he's run that organization. And players know that too, by the way that he treats them based upon the contracts that he gives out. There was obviously that situation this offseason where Shamar Stewart didn't sign that deal because the Bengals tried to put a clause in there with guaranteed money. And with Hendrickson, he wanted a contract extension. He wanted to stay with Cincinnati. Final year of his deal, no more guaranteed money left on it. The Bengals did not sign him to a contract extension. All they did was up his salary in 2025. So what that tells me, you know, if you're in a relationship, somebody's actions and their words obviously speak volumes. In football, this speaks volumes. Trey Hendrickson is not a part of the Bengals' plans beyond 2025. And let's think about 2025 and beyond, right? The Bengals might be 2-1 right now, but Joe Burrow's not coming back until December. Jake Browning is the quarterback. He stinks. There is no way in my eyes that Cincinnati is a playoff level team, nor do they have a winning record by the time that Burrow comes back in December. And when that happens, I don't think that he's going to come back in a situation where the Bengals can rally to make the playoffs. And so I think the Bengals going into the deadline, once they start losing some games, they could be open to trading Hendrickson, because from a business standpoint, wouldn't you rather get value back and picks back for a player who you'd otherwise lose in free agency for nothing? And so to DJ and what he said with the trade, I think it's higher than that. I think you might have to give up a 1, you might have to give up a 2, but if you were to have traded for Hendrickson in the offseason, the value is definitely higher for a guy who nobody in the NFL has more sacks than him the last 2 years. 17.5 in 2023, 17.5 in 2024. He's off to a really good start this year. Now, San Francisco in 2026, speaking of draft compensation, they're in a pretty good spot. You know, right now they have a first-round pick, a second-round pick, a third. They have 3/4, 2 of which are slotted compensatory picks and projected. They have a 5th, and then they have a 6 from the Vikings. They also have cap space. They have $25 million in cap room right now if they want to use some of those picks and that money to trade for Trey Hendrickson. And then lastly, before I throw it back to you, you know, obviously if you trade for Hendrickson, you're probably going to sign him to a contract extension, and it's not going to be cheap. But scheme-wise, even if in 2026 and beyond, you have Hendrickson and a healthy Bosa and Michael Williams, it's not like you have to worry about one of those players being out of the rotation. There will always be snaps available because of what the Niners do on defense. Hendrickson, Bosa, Michael, they can play defensive end and they can play defensive tackle. And so you can always find a way for those players to be on the field at the same time. We know that San Francisco really values their defensive line. And at 3-0 right now, they've shown that they can contend, in my opinion, in the NFC. They lead the league in passing yards per game, and they've played 2 different quarterbacks. They're playing really well defensively. They still have the easiest schedule in the NFL. And so if this pass rush struggles over the next several weeks, I'm all in on Trey Hendrickson. I think he's a fantastic player. He's a good locker room fit. He's a good scheme fit. And obviously you lose an elite player with Bosa, but then you gain one with Hendrickson. And I think he'd really be able to help.
Yeah, at first I was like, yeah, you know what? I'd rather go cheaper if I could get like a Will McDonald from the Jets, or if I could get a Kayvon Thibodeau. But the more I think about it, the real value here is also making sure that Colton McKivitz and Trent Williams don't have to block, Trey Hendrickson in Philly.
Yep. Right.
Or Trey Hendrickson
and they just lost Nolan Smith for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And so their players
or
for
Trey Hendrickson opposite Aiden Hutchinson.
Yep.
Or Trey Hendrickson opposite Micah Parsons. I mean, he's a unique player. The other reason I love it is because you know what, the real problem the Niners have had with getting other guys from outside organizations is that they've gotten guys who don't play hard. Chase Young dogged it in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
That's so unlike the Niners, but this guy won't be like that. This guy's motor is legendary. So to me, anybody you're going to get, on defense, especially, defense is so much about effort and want and intensity and motor. And it's like, that guy's got to have a crazy motor, and it's got to be somebody who's really, to me, I will bring in outside guys who I know play hard, even if they're not great guys. Like if I were the Niners, I'd go after Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I don't know where he's going to go. Maybe is he going back to Philadelphia? But I mean, he won't. He is an incredible talent, and the guy can play corner, nickel, free safety, strong safety, weak side linebacker. I mean, the guy can pretty much do it all, and he plays hard. So I would take him, but no more of these guys that Cadillac it or don't play hard, because and that's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys out there that don't play as hard as the Niners play. So that's something that they got to keep in mind.